Okay, hi, welcome to UX for Lizard Brains. We're going to start off with just a quick party trick, because it's right after lunch. So if you have an iPhone, get it out. And if you have a friend next to you that doesn't have an iPhone, kind of share with them, let them look over your shoulder so that they can be in on the joke as well. And just turn your volume up and down. First, take your phone off silent. It should be on silent, right? So take it off silent. And just turn your volume up and down. Turn it up, turn it down, up and down. Okay. And what button did you push to turn the volume up? What would you call that button? The up button? The top button? Call it the up button, maybe the down button to turn the volume down. And what did the visual indicator to reinforce that the volume was going up and down? Did it go up and down? No. Has anybody ever noticed that? This is a fun party trick. You can have it. You can do it with your friends. Okay, so I think this was probably inspired by the dials. You know, dials in cars and in old radios. You turn the dial right and left, and the visual indicator will go right and left, right? But what happened here is they took that visual indicator. This is what I'm guessing. I haven't talked to Apple about this, but they took that visual indicator, and they were inspired by it. But then they put a different physical action with it. And this is kind of a small, silly example, so you can put your phones back on silent. This is a small, silly example, okay? But multiply this tiny cognitive dissonance, small cognitive dissonance, amongst billions of interactions every day of turning the volume up and down on an iPhone. Billions, millions, maybe. And you just have human capital, just like brain cells just popping off, tiny little brain cells. And then think about just anybody that has a small cognitive disability or a big cognitive disability, and this actually might be a little bit more difficult for them to make this connection and make sure that they are indeed turning the volume up or down. So let's do a quick redesign, because this is really what I'm here to talk about. This is my crusade, even though this is a tiny example. So this is one thing we could do to redesign it. We could just flip it so that the physical action mimics the visual action. Why not? It's pixels. This doesn't cost any more to do it this way, okay? And then we can even bring it up a little bit, right? So that it's more in line with the physical action. And what is one other thing we can do? Maybe that, right? And we're not making any kind of visual compromises here. What we're doing is we're just matching it up a little bit better. Okay, so what does it mean for design to be intuitive? Does anybody have, I'm just curious, does anybody have any like good definitions, or what does it mean to you? How do you know that you've created an intuitive design? What's like the test? Yeah. That the design disappears, that you don't even think about the design. You're just using the thing, you're getting things done without even thinking about how to do it. Anybody else have anything? Yeah. You should behave the way you expect. This is kind of what I say too. You should just do it, and it's like, yeah, that's what I expected, and you don't even think about that's what you expected, because it just does. You only notice it when it does what you didn't expect it to do, and then you notice the design. But how do we know what users expect? How do we find out what they expect? Research. We go to do research, and we do usability testing, and we do interviews. And so we figure out what they expect, then we design it, then we test it again. Right? And here's the secret, though. Now, I am a big proponent of research and usability testing. Don't get me wrong there. But the secret is there is a baseline of expectations that us digital design people are not talking about enough. That we can maybe even focus our research on the more complex things and just cut to the chase with a baseline of intuitive design that we just know about humans. It's not about this user, or this context, or that product, or what products they've used before. It's just humans. Okay, so this is how our good friends at dictionary.com defines intuitive. What one feels to be true, even without conscious reasoning. instinctive. So let's just use instinctive. I like that a lot. Intuitive is instinctive. You can use it without thinking. And this is what we want for all of our designs, right? That our digital tools can be used almost without thinking. Remember, don't make me think, right? And our digital environments can be navigated without thinking. So that all that brain power isn't used up by figuring out how to use the thing or how to navigate the thing. It can be used to get things done and make things better. And build wells where they need to be built, and cure cancer, and all the things, all the problems that we need to solve. They shouldn't be worried about how to navigate or how to use the thing. So now we're over a decade into a world with iPhones, and we sometimes forget how humans spent the first couple millennia. Our brains, they evolved in physical space, manipulating physical objects. And we come with this kind of serious baggage from all of those years of evolution of just sort of working with dirts and rocks and animals and plants. And we have some really deep-seated beliefs about how things should operate. But when we design with bits and pixels, this removes the things that we're designing from the constraints of physical space. Yay, it's awesome, right? Isn't this the very best thing about pixels? About designing it with technology, is this freedom from all these very petty rules of physics. Because in digital space, you can teleport, right? You can teleport with hyperlinks, and with your video conferencing, you can be in 3 places at one time. A billion people can read the same article without killing one tree. You can autocorrect. Don't you always sometimes want to Google your apartment? Where are my keys? Can I Google them, please? Right? We can make magic happen. We can undo. We can unfriend with a click of the button. How nice is that? And in seconds, milliseconds actually, we can find all the blue strappy sandals, size 8 with a 2-inch heel out of 1 million different products in a warehouse. We can go zoop, there they all are. That is magic. That's the magic of technology. And the thing about this, though, the thing that we need to consider, though, is that when we design for the digital world, those laws of physics, yes, they are no longer a constraint technically, but some of these laws are still a constraint mentally for the user. So we want to create magic while we respect a few important rules of the physical world. Okay, so imagine you're walking into an unfamiliar coffee shop to meet a friend. And you walk into this coffee shop, but it's a very strange coffee shop. And in this coffee shop, you can't really tell the difference between the tables and the chairs and the people. You see a bunch of things, but you can't really tell what's what. And then maybe with intense concentration, you can be like, that's a person, not a chair. All right, it's a person, not a chair. But then you have to think even harder to figure out, is this person the barista? Or is this person a stranger? Or is this the person that I'm trying to meet? Okay, it's the person I'm trying to meet. And there's a chair, and that chair is empty, but I'm not sure which table it goes with. Okay, this would be exhausting, right? This would be very, very difficult. And just a nod to anybody here, anybody really in the world that has any visual impairment. People with visual impairment, they are still having to figure out some certain fundamental things. And when they are visually impaired, they are still using their visual cortex. Even though they might not be using their eyes, they're still using their visual cortex. They are using coping mechanisms like clicking and sticks to figure out what the objects are, where the objects are, what they can do to the objects, what the relationships between the objects are. And so what I think we're doing is we are creating digital environments often when these questions are not necessarily intuitive to answer. These are very easy for us well-sighted people to do in the physical world. And blind people actually function very well figuring out ways to answer these questions. But then we go into digital environments, and all of a sudden it's tough to answer these questions. It's tough to answer, what are the objects? Where are the objects? What are those relationships between the objects? Does this chair go with that table, or does this chair go with that table? Is that person sitting in that chair, or are they sitting in another chair? And what can I do to the objects? What do I want to do to the objects? What is possible with these objects? What can other people do to the objects? If I create an object, how can another person see it? Can another person edit it? These things are often really tough to figure out in digital environments. So we're going to go over 4 design principles for you today to basically address these questions and make sure that your designs make these things much more intuitive so that users can go on to getting things done. So design principle 1, objects should be easy to identify. This seems so obvious. So to figure out what they are, you got to be able to identify them. So in the wild, things usually don't change shape. All right? If they do, it's a slow process, like the child human becoming an adult human. Over the years, you barely realize it's happening. Or the butterfly, or the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. This is a process that actually feels very abrupt. But when it does happen, usually these extreme shape changes, these shape shiftings happening in nature, it's kind of an edge case in nature. And when it does happen, it's very meaningful. There's a reason that it's happening, and that reason is apparent. But in the digital world, sometimes we have this shape shifting going on that is arbitrary. And things changing shape with no meaning, we're going to try to apply meaning to it, and it's going to make that object more difficult to identify. So here we have LinkedIn. Everybody use LinkedIn-ish, kind of? Okay. Anybody like really enjoy using LinkedIn? Do we have any LinkedIn designers here? If we do, come talk to me. Let's talk. Okay, so if you ever wonder why LinkedIn is maybe a terrible place to be, it's because the main object, the person object, that is the main thing that we care about within LinkedIn. There's other things. There's companies. There's jobs. There's groups. There's posts. But the main thing is people. That is what LinkedIn is made of, people and the connections between the people. And here's one way a person is represented. So then when I go to my network, I can see Mariana, and this is how she is represented. This is her packaging. This is how the LinkedIn designers have decided to represent her. If I go to search results, though, it shifts a little bit. Tiny little things change. What do we have going on here? So one thing is my relationship. My relationship to this person is represented in a different way. It's represented in a different place with different language. And then if I go into another place, I have an area where I can see a bunch of recommendations, and I see a person being represented in a completely different way, very different visually, and also different as far as what kind of attributes are shown here. And some of these changes might make sense, okay? Now here's something that I wanna, my main pushback on this, and I know what you're thinking now. You're like, well, for different contexts, maybe you wanna prioritize things differently and show things differently. Okay, but have a very good reason to do it and be very intentional about how you're doing it and test the hell out of it to make sure that it doesn't make people's heads explode, okay, when you're changing things around. And often when you're changing things around, you wanna do this, you have more liberty to do this for tools that people are using all the time. So maybe LinkedIn is okay. We're gonna look at some where people are using it for maybe one day. And if you're using something for one day, you want zero learning curve. So you want to make sure that that object is super easy to recognize. So look at this other thing, how it's showing shared connections. So it's showing it differently visually. We have an icon versus like the little circle people. And we also have, does anybody else see like the really egregious thing here? Small but egregious? They use different language around it. There's mutual connections versus shared connections. Why call them, like, is there a difference between these? I don't know. Does anybody know? I think that they're the same. They're just designing 2 different pages, probably 2 different designers, and they're calling the same exact thing 2 different things. Why do this? You're making more work on yourself, you're making more work on the developer, and you're making more work on the user because they're having to match these things up. These things that are different but are meaninglessly different. Oh yeah, and then we have the ability, in one of these places we have the ability to remove the connection. Can't remove a connection in the other places. I guess it makes sense with Pablo because he's not a connection yet. Okay, let's go to GoDaddy. We're going to spend some time with GoDaddy, and we're going to go back to LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn and GoDaddy in this particular presentation are going to get picked on pretty hard. So GoDaddy, here we have my domains. We have a domain, and I buy domains like candy bars late at night and in large quantities. So we have my domains, and we have expiring domains. Why these are not just one list with the ability to maybe filter by just show me the ones that are expiring, or sort by when they are expiring. No, these are in two different lists in two completely different places in the information architecture. And look at all these differences. Here we have expires on a certain date versus cancels on a certain date. So different language around it. One of them is red in one place and gray in the other place. Again, different language. I think that this is the same thing because this is the same domain. So one place they're saying it expires and cancels, and I'm like, does that mean the same thing? I don't know. Also privacy. So privacy, the way that they're showing me about, describing privacy to me and giving me some calls to action about how I should manage my privacy is completely different place. And I actually had to do some reverse engineering to even figure out, are these really the same thing? And then we'll talk about auto-renew a little bit later. If you were in my workshop yesterday, you already know what's coming there. A little bit of a rant. Has anybody gotten into trouble with this before? Did I see yes? Okay, now there's going to be, I'm sorry, there's a lot of these things I'm going to show you today, you're not going to be able to unsee them. And you are going to now be able to say, when you are getting frustrated with something, you're going to be like, that's a shapeshifter right there. Or one of the other things we're going to talk about. So this right here, I'm a recovered no snoozer. Thank you, Mel Robbins, and in the 5-second rule. Anybody read that one? Yeah. So usually I'm a no snoozer, but sometimes I do have the snooze on. And this is a very insidious shapeshifter because it looks very similar. But what is changing here is the functionality of that big orange button in the exact same place. And this can really get you in trouble if you are stopping when you think you are snoozing and you go back to sleep and you miss your big meeting. And then you're very upset. And you don't really know why. Why did I mess that up? God, I didn't even think I was doing that. And we beat ourselves up over these things. So here's my very first responsive design. This is where all of this thinking started. This was the election results in 2016. This is a big project. It was responsive. It was very high profile. And we did a good job with it, though. We created a really simple system. And I started thinking about creating systems with reusable parts and making sure things are consistent. But I wasn't quite there yet. So I was doing funky things like this. So this is one of those examples of a design that people are going to really use for one night. They're going to use it on November 9th, on election night. This is 2012. We are going to look at 2016 in a second. So be prepared for that. And you can see here we have a map view and a list view. And this is representing the exact same thing. That, when you click on it, it goes to the same place. It goes to the Ohio presidential results page. Okay, but I'm moving small things around. I'm moving where I show that this is a battleground. I'm moving the timestamp around. I'm moving where I'm showing estimated % in. And since this is a design that people are using for one night when they're really stressed out, I don't want to be moving these things around. I don't want people to be having to track these things. And don't get me wrong, no user is actually recognizing that these things are moving, usually. They're just wondering why they can't find the thing, right? Because they're training. Once you learn how to use a thing in one place, this is how we survive. Right? We learn how to use a thing in one place, and we take those learnings to similar things in other places. Okay? This is how we work in the world. And so we do that. We're really great at it. We figure out how to use the thing. We figure out where all the pieces are, and then we go and we see that thing again, and we're like, that's the same thing, and now things are moved around. And we just kind of we get either mad at the system, but we don't really know why, or we get mad at ourselves. So this is 2016. I got to come back for a victory lap as a consultant, which was very cool. We did all sorts of neat things with the designers. I often call what I teach object-oriented UX. I often call it skeuomorphism 2.0. So showing and not telling. A lot of Americans, believe it or not, don't know the difference between the House and the Senate. They don't understand the scope of the House. So a visualization like this is really great to show really actually the breadth of the house and how the balance of power works. So that's just a side note. But look at this. This is the same exact modules. We have a map flyout module and we have a grid module, and they are identical. They are exactly the same. We have a little progressive disclosure there, where in one of them we show the bar graphs to reinforce those percentages, and one of them we don't. Progressive disclosure is fine if you've prioritized those attributes and you're keeping that prioritization consistent. Okay, so on the flip side of shapeshifters, we have masked objects. So while shapeshifters is a single object that just wears lots of different outfits as it goes around the party, the masked objects are an object that looks like another object. Objects that are all wearing the same outfit. So this one just cracked me up. This was at a hotel, and it was early in the morning, and I grabbed the soap and was like, how do I get my floss out? So this happens in the real world sometimes, but usually in the real world, we're pretty good at figuring out what things are. Here we're going back to LinkedIn. Do you have better contrast? No, sorry about the contrast. So here we have what LinkedIn is calling recommendations. Now, this is the funny thing. These are all recommendations, so they should all look the same. But actually what these are, this is a person, this is a group, this is a company, and this is a hashtag. These are 4 different things. But what LinkedIn is doing is they are showing the objects from their perspective. Now, these are recommendations. No, these are things from my perspective. These are actual things in the real world. And so what we have here also is when you interact with these, when you actually click these buttons and you go and you follow or you join or you connect, the feedback is actually almost identical too. It's like the green check mark and blah, 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 TLDR, right? But the thing is these are actually doing very different things. Following a person is very different than joining a group, which is very different than following or connecting with a person is different than following a company. Different things happen. There's different implications in doing this thing, but it feels exactly the same. So we can see here we have recommendations, people, groups, companies, hashtags, and they actually are the exact same structure. So what I encourage you to do instead is to decide what your objects are and make them recognizable. So you can make them recognizable in one of 2 ways. You can make sure that they are not masked and that they are not shape-shifting. Okay, moving on to number 2. Objects should have clear boundaries. So to understand where an object is, it's difficult to understand where an object is if you can't find the edges. So this is the main thing that our visual cortex is doing, is it's looking for edges. Okay, and we have these beautiful, this is a side note just on graphic design, we have these beautiful, like, elegant graphic design where, like, you have the module and you just have, like, a tiny 1-pixel gray line separating the things. And you have to use your cognitive abilities to kind of bring the whole gestalt around. Put edges around your things. Just make it easier for just me to say, like, this is a thing and this is a different thing, and don't make everything blur together from a visual perspective. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more abstractly, about how it's also hard to tell where a thing is if pieces of the thing are all over the experience. They're scattered everywhere. They're broken. So we're going to look at broken objects. Okay, so this is Wink Wine. Wink Wine is a service that delivers wine to your door. It's wonderful. And they have a beautifully designed site. But their main object, what is the main object within LinkedIn? Bottles of wine? Did I hear bottles of wine? Yes, that is the main thing in LinkedIn. Where are we again? And Wink. They sound the same, don't they? LinkedIn. So the main thing is bottles of wine. And the bottles of wine have kind of 2 different states. There's bottles of wine that are sort of recommended that I haven't gotten yet. And then there's bottles of wine that I have gotten and I have rated that then result in more recommendations. But really the thing is the bottles of wine. So here I'm going into Wink Wine, and my use case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out a certain bottle of wine that I got back in June. So I'm looking for my wines. Like my wines, where's the wine that I got in June? Because I want to reorder it because it was really good. I know it was a red wine. It was June or July. I think it was July, actually. So let's see if we can find that. So I'm like, okay, here's where I rate it, but I just want to know when I got it. So I jump into the detail page, but this isn't my detail page. This is just like the generic detail page. And for the record, that rating is not my rating. That rating is the overall rating. So then I go into like my account, order history. That's got to be it, right? So now I see all my orders, and I go into July, and then I can see wines. Now I can't rate them there. I can only rate them on the home page. So we have abilities and we have metadata that's moved all around this experience. So what we have here is on the home page, we have a module kind of representing my wine, but it's really, again, it's from the Winx perspective and not from my perspective. It's your rating, which is a sort of ephemeral thing, ephemeral digital thing. My rating, no, it's my wine that I rate. Okay, that's how the mental models work. It's based on objects. So I'm looking at this thing that I can rate, and I try to click into it, because that might be the one. That might be the one that I had in July. I don't know. It doesn't tell me. And then I go to this generic page. And then also, when I go into my orders, then I can see the wine again. And if I click on it there, I also go to that generic page. So the ability to rate, and then the date of when I got that wine is in very different places. There's no one place I can go to see my wine. So I am left wondering, where's my bottle of wine? It's nowhere, it's everywhere and nowhere. Okay, so principle number 3, objects should be directly manipulated. What can I do to these objects? And when you're trying, what do babies do when they're trying to figure out what they can do to something? Reach out and grab it. That's what we do too. We reach out and grab the thing. If we want to manipulate the thing, we try to touch the thing. That's how it works in the real world. So we're going to look at more this kind of other side of broken objects, is when the actual ability to do the thing is disconnected from the thing. It's very unintuitive to say, I want to open up this bottle of water, so I'm going to go to a menu up here to open up the bottle of water. No, I'm going to touch the thing. So going back to GoDaddy, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize if I get a little heated here, because this is not only a broken object, this is actually a dark pattern as well. So this auto renew here, do you see auto renew? Now one, this is a little bit of a confusing toggle. Where you see the switch with auto renew, that's actually off. Auto renew is off there. But they do, even though it's confusing on which one's on and off, if you switch it, you're turning it on. They make it easy enough to go ahead and turn auto renew on. Because what happens when I turn auto renew on? I get that money, yeah? Okay, but what if I want to turn auto renew off? With one where auto renew is already on. Do you see? Where's my toggle? Where is it? Oh, they hid it from me because they want another $17.99 from me. And they're going to make it purposely difficult for me to turn auto renew off. So I actually have to go, we're not even going to look at the video, but you have to go, I have it on YouTube, follow me on YouTube. You have to go to a menu, then you go to a detail page, then you scroll all the way down the detail page, and then there's like this tiny little whisper of a blue link that's like, turn auto renew off, and then you go to another thing, and then you have to do another toggle, and you have to like turn around three times, touching your nose, and then you can turn auto renew off, and I bet a lot of people just give up. And then GoDaddy just steals the $17 from them. Okay, so this one has been recently fixed, but it was not like this for years and years. So you guys use Spotify? And I use Spotify and I use playlists quite a bit. So what I'm trying to do here with Spotify is I am trying to remove this song from this playlist. Okay, so I go into that detail. There's no remove from playlist there. So I go back, I go into this like add to queue, which I still don't understand what the queue is, really, in Spotify. Still can't find it. Okay, get me out of here. This isn't right. Okay, so I'm looking now. I have to find the song, because I'm going to try to find it from the module. It didn't work from that like detail view. Oh, it's the green one. I have to find the green one. That's the one that's playing. I go into the menu again. Still no remove from playlist there. So I try the swipey thing. Like maybe if I swipe it, I can get rid of it. What I have to do is I have to go into edit mode. I have to actually edit the container of the thing. I have to change the mode of the playlist to be able to edit the actual thing, which that doesn't happen in the real world. You don't like edit the basket to change something about the egg in the basket. you go ahead and grab the egg, okay? And this has been updated, but it was for years like this. Now they actually have removed from this playlist in the menu. Good job. Good job, Spotify. Good job. Okay, here's another one. This is our good friends at Wells Fargo. They recently did this redesign like last year or something. And all I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to edit the name of an account. I have like 6 accounts. I'm sure that lots of people within, if you have business accounts and shared accounts, all I want to do is edit the name of an account. So, okay, what would I do first to edit the name of an account? Maybe go into that little menu? All right, not there. Let's go into the detail page. Okay, there's no way to actually edit the name. I try to click it. Maybe let's go into the main menu. Maybe it's in some sort of settings. All right. So now I'm having to to edit the thing, I'm having to go into the attic to edit the thing. So I'm going into the attic right here of Wells Fargo. Maybe account, what is that? Account summary. Okay, so manage your profile, manage account settings, or manage online settings. So I'm trying to edit the name of the account. Where would you go? Account settings, to manage the settings on the account? Let's give it a try. Let's see how this goes. All right, manage travel plans, view account profile. So there I go into view account profile, and I can see the nickname. I can see the nickname, holding hands, shared account. And I'm rage clicking it. I'm like, I just want to edit you. Why won't you let me edit you? Okay, let's go back. Manage your profile, I guess. Nickname accounts. So there's a tendency for companies to think about the objects from their scenario, from their point of view instead of the user's point of view. So they're thinking like, oh, the way that somebody's labeling their accounts, that's their profile, that's them. But from my perspective, I'm editing my accounts. So this is a very easy thing to change. I mean, one thing, it could just be easily changed right there. Maybe I hover over it and I can just edit it right there. Why the heck not? It's not going to clutter up the interface at all. If it's just an on-hover thing for desktop. And then on that account settings screen that we looked at, where is it? Edit. Where's the edit? Right there. So we want to directly manipulate stuff. To edit the thing, to change the thing, we're going to try to grab the thing. Okay. Design principle 4. Relationships between the objects should be clear and navigable. This is how we're going to want to jump from thing to thing, is through the relationships between the thing, the real-world relationships between the thing. So what we want to do is we want to avoid isolating our objects. So here we are in Eventbrite. So I use Eventbrite to organize quite a few events. And in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out certain names. I'm trying to figure out the people that have used a discount code. I'm trying to figure out who my volunteers are. Because I have a volunteer discount code, and if you've organized an event, you know you use a lot of discount codes. So I have the volunteer discount code for 100% off, and I just need to figure out who used that discount code. So where would you go first? To discount codes maybe? Or to people? One or the other? It's you could go either one. Go to discount codes or go to the attendees. So I actually go to discount codes first here. Nope, whoop, whoop, whoop. There we go. So let's go over, because I already know our discount codes. Discount and access codes. Don't know the difference between those. Discounts and access, I think that they're the same thing. Not sure. Y'all, language and labeling is very important. So there I can see my volunteer discount code, and I can see 5 out of 6 people have used it, and I'm rage clicking again on that 5. I'm like, who are those 5 people? Who are they? Just tell me who they are. So I go into the menu, the little drop-down thing. It's not there. So I'll go the other direction. Let me go over to people. To go to people, I have to go to orders. So they're, again, seeing it from the Eventbrite view of the orders and not the actual people that are going. It's about the people. So now I'm searching, because I look at the people, and there's no way to see who used what discount code. So I'm doing a search, typing in the exact discount code, feeling like a ridiculous person. Still not seeing it. Still not seeing it, just clicking on stuff. Oh, here, different report types. Do you see the report type that I need? We're getting close, we're getting warmer. Okay, it's promotion code usage. So again, they're using a different label for the same thing. Discount and access codes over here, promotion codes over here. But what is actually not happening here is we have a connection, a very strong connection here, a real world connection of we have tickets, or discount codes, tickets with discount codes, okay, tickets, discount codes, and we have people. And a person uses 0 to many discount codes, and a ticket is used by, or discount code, sorry, a discount code is used by 0 to many people. And this is a connection that they have broken. They have isolated these two things. So it's very difficult for me to figure out what I need to do. So let's avoid all of this. Okay, so how can we fight back here? So we're going to fight back in 4 different ways. We're going to try as much as possible to keep our objects consistent, unless we have a really good reason, a really good intentional reason to change things around in different contexts. Otherwise, to make something recognizable, it needs to basically stay the same. We also want to make sure things that are different don't look the same. So we want to make sure our things are recognizable and defined. We want to make sure our objects are encapsulated, have very, very clear edges. And instead of isolating our objects, we want to connect our objects based on those real-world relationships. So I just have a few minutes left, and we are going to have time for questions. I pressed the wrong button. Hang on. Boop, boop, boop. All right. Oh, what is that? So this is the process that I use. This is something called object mapping. It's really fun. It's basically a puzzle. We did it yesterday, and it involves a lot of sticky notes. These are digital sticky notes because this got a little bit too advanced. This one took quite a while to do. Usually this is something you can do in about a day with a group of people. And the process is just figuring out what the objects are, what is the chemical makeup of these objects, what are the attributes, what are they made of, what's the content, what's the metadata, and what are the connections, what are the relationships between these objects. And then also, what does a user want to do to these objects? And then we also do things like object modeling. So figuring out, this is basically an entity relationship diagram from a user's perspective. What are the things in this world, and how do these things connect? This should be my main way of navigating. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more, here's my little shameless sales pitch. My absolute favorite thing to do on this planet is to teach this process to companies and to designers, because I have seen so much help in my own process. This is a process that I use on every single client. I really can't imagine not using it anymore. So it makes your process a whole lot smoother. It also makes your designs a whole lot smoother and a lot more intuitive. Also, you can Google object-oriented UX. There's a lot of content out there. And in the last Net magazine, the one with the big pink V on there, there's an article on object-oriented UX, and with pictures of my cat, which is really great. So thank you so much for your attention.